All right, also breaking tonight, President-elect Trump announcing his pick for White House press secretary. It was long awaited, and now RNC chief strategist and Trump transition team member Sean Spicer has been chosen, and he's talking first to the Kelly File about his new position in the Trump administration. Sean Spicer joins me now for a Kelly File exclusive. Congratulations,
Thank you very much.
So how did you find out about the gig, by the way?
Mr. Trump called and said congratulations. And I told him I was honored, and it was an unbelievably humbling moment to think of some of the people that have held this position and what it does. It's an opportunity to speak on behalf of this country, on behalf of the next president of the United States, and deliver them the messages and news that where this country's going and what it's doing. So it is humbling, to say the least, to realize some of the folks that have had this job and the footsteps that I'm going to walk in.
Considering Donald Trump ran anything but a conventional campaign,
right,
everyone's wondering what is your job as press secretary going to look like, considering all the criticism we have seen from Donald Trump of the media, various outlets, individual reporters tweeting at them. What does your job look like?
Well, I think there's a difference between calling people out and understanding the role that the press plays in a free society. The press has a right to go out and write stories and communicate things, but I think similarly, in what Donald Trump has proven, both as a candidate and now as a president-elect, is that when people are wrong, he's going to hold them accountable and he's going to correct the record. So it's going to be he's used Twitter more effectively in social media between Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Do you like that? Will he continue that?
It's not a question of like, because it's unique. He has a direct pipeline to the American people to talk to them in a way that no one's done before. I think it's fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating, and it makes every day, every hour just unbelievable, because you know that you're having that conversation with the American people, and they can have it back with him, and he's not having to put everything through the filter of the mainstream media.
Well, you don't have to look far to see your name in headlines all over the place right now. Washington Post headline today: Trump chooses Sean Spicer for press secretary, rounds out communications staff. When you dig into the article, Sean, it says filling what is likely to be a challenging position given Trump's sometimes hostile relationship with the media and his propensity to bypass staff to communicate directly with the public on Twitter. That is some of the criticism that we are...
I don't know that it's a criticism. Look, he's the president of the United States. We answer to him. He doesn't answer to us. And I think what we do, we serve him and the American people and try to get the word out in terms of the communication staff. But he has a direct pipeline to them. And if he wants to use Twitter or any other social platform to speak to the American people directly, that's what he should do. He's the president. It's not our job to tell him what to do. It's to serve him and to help amplify that message.
All right, so let's talk about how your role might look different than previous press secretaries. One of them works right here at Fox News, Dana Perino. But you had hinted with Megyn Kelly on this program last week, maybe daily press briefings aren't needed. Are you going to do away with those?
I think what we need to do, and it's the same thing that Donald Trump's looking at everything in government, is can we do things better? Can we be more effective? Can we put the American people first in some of these? So maybe you saw how effective they used Facebook Live. Are there things that we can do? It's not a question of getting rid of certain things, or maybe we add certain things, but I think that we want to be innovative, entrepreneurial, as we look at all of these positions and all of these government agencies.
So will there be daily press briefings?
I believe that we'll have daily briefings, but maybe we add an element to them. Maybe not everything's on camera. Maybe we bring more people into the process. There's an amazing group of folks. You know, he named today Kellyanne Conway, Jason Miller.
What will her role be? By the way, she's appointed counselor to the president. She's the highest-ranking woman in Trump's White House.
Right, and she was also the first female ever to win a presidential election. So Kellyanne is someone who's shattered the glass ceiling and continues to do it. But she has been someone that the president trusts to give her advice on strategy and messaging, and she will continue to play that senior role of counseling him, giving him ideas, talking about how to shape an agenda and a narrative.
All right, let me talk to you about a couple things in the news right now. Ivanka Trump and this JetBlue plane incident. What do you know about it?
Well, clearly there was somebody who was trying to act out of line, and I think JetBlue acted accordingly and took that individual away. They went on Twitter and made it very clear that their intention was to, quote, harass her and her family. That's inappropriate, no matter what your feelings are towards anyone in this country. To do that to a woman who was on there with her children, I don't care what your political background is or what your thoughts are. That's not the way we as Americans need to act.
Drain the swamp. Newt Gingrich had hinted that maybe that messaging was going away with the president-elect.
I think the president made it very clear on Twitter today it's going to keep going.
He did. So everybody's kind of wondering where the former speaker was coming with those words, but he has since retracted that, and he put out a message on his own social media that maybe I was wrong.
One of the things that I think people have to understand is that Donald Trump is the ultimate decider, and he will tell you what he believes and how something's going to get done. Other people don't tell him what he needs to think or do. And I think we've seen that time and time again. And look, when you look at the Lockheed story today about the F-35, the Boeing story with Air Force One, he isn't even president. We're 29 days out. He's gotten results on carrier. He's brought costs down on government programs. He is going to get things done in a way that people have never seen. The change that's going to come to Washington, I think, is going to send shockwaves through the system.
All right, it seems like every pick that Donald Trump has made, his critics have dug up something on them. Are they going to find anything?
I hope not.
Anything out there that we should know about?
I hope not. I think I've done a pretty good job but I hope that every day that I serve in this job, I make Mr. Trump proud, Reince Priebus proud, Governor Pence proud, and more importantly, the American people. I think that what he has asked of every one of us is to make this country proud of us, proud of the accomplishments that he's going to have as president, and make the country great again.
Sean, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.